This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. Today's episode is at Bistro Off Broad in Winder, Georgia. Now, a lot of us, when we think of great locations for that special date night or a wedding anniversary or a birthday celebration or whatever, some of us may not think about the town of Winder, Georgia as being a great spot for hosting such an event for a special day for that special someone in our life. I'm telling you, when you walk in to Bistro Off Broad in Winder, it is going to knock your socks off. It is so just the inside is gorgeous. Honestly, it reminds me of one of the first jobs I ever had in Pennsylvania. I was at a high-end restaurant, and when you walk into those restaurants, they have a feel and a motif that is different than, even your high-end chain restaurants, the ones that are really nice. It's completely different, and when you have an ambiance like that, your food is going to be like out of sight. And that's what everybody wants for that special date. You want a place that is a beautiful location, setting, but you also want the food to be like spectacular. And you have both with Bistro. So before we get started, I just want to say thank you for those of you who are sharing this. We are getting new listeners almost every week with new downloads of episodes. And so this is something that, as we are kind of taking inventory of our quarantine status right now, with everything going on with coronavirus and all that sort of stuff, what a great opportunity to get more familiar with restaurants, small businesses, nonprofits, locations for taking the family out for a day trip in our area than just listening to some of the episodes. Again, all of these are going to be locally owned small businesses, and so as we are all becoming more and more cognizant of supporting our local communities, this is one of those outlets where you can really, really do a great work in your local community and get plugged in to some staple elements and some new elements of our North Georgia region. You know where to find us online, North Georgia Life Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can always email us at northgeorgialifepodcast@gmail.com if you have questions, suggestions for future episodes, or anything else we can help you out with. We'd be happy to. So with that, we'll get started with Chef Alex at Bistro Off Broad. Welcome to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It's Jake, your host, and today we are at a location that I am very excited about because I have had probably 3 or 4 people in the last 2 to 3 months that have mentioned this place as one of their favorite places in our North Georgia region. And so we are here today with Executive Chef Alex Friedman at Bistro Off Broad in Winder, Georgia. Winder is a town that is growing massively. I told somebody about a month ago or so that if I was going to start a new business in our area and didn't really have a perfect place picked out, downtown Winder would be one of those locations that I would seriously look at because of the growth and frankly the type of businesses that are opening up in this neck of the woods. So with that, Alex, I know you're busy. We've got a lot to talk about, so I don't want to waste too much time with the intro. Thanks for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So let's start out with where does Chef Alex come from? Have you always had a cooking gene in you? Is this something that you dreamed of when you were a kid?
No, not necessarily. I grew up in a small town outside Indianapolis called Plainfield, Indiana.
Okay.
Very reminiscent to kind of what Winder is, although not that kind of mountain townish. It was more, that Midwestern town, but it was still that old school town, the old movie theater right in downtown that's, with the red seats that folded down that were super uncomfortable and always had a spring broken in them.
That's right.
Graduating class of 275 people.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up in a really artistic household, and I originally graduated from high school and went to college as a art major in ceramics and mixed media and sculpture.
Okay.
So I thought that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I went off to college and realized about a year into it that I just wasn't really happy with the medium that I was working in. I just wasn't inspired by what I was doing. And kind of rewinding a little bit, I got my first job when I was about 14 years old in a restaurant. I was a busboy and a dishwasher. And then from there, I kind of moved up to a prep cook. And from prep cook, I went to a line cook. And I was a short order cook. And that's what I did through high school to make a living. And when I went off to college, I think I got a short-order job. My first job in college, I was a fry cook at Hooters.
Okay.
I was 18 years old. This is 1996.
Yeah.
In my mind, I thought I get to hang out with all the cute Hooters girls.
I am the man.
Not realizing that the cute Hooters girls did not want to hang out with the fry cook that was there until 2 a.m. and stunk like fried chicken wings.
Yeah.
So after I dropped out of art school, I kind of traveled around for a little while. I got in a car and drove from Indiana to California and back, and stayed in campsites and just kind of piddled around, and ended up back in the same town that I'd gone to college in, which was Evansville, Indiana. And I got a job at a restaurant that was called the Petroleum Club, which was part of the Club Corporation of America, CCA. They own massive members-only clubs and golf courses all over the country. And this was one of those restaurants that was on the top floor of the old National Bank building, right in downtown Evansville. Again, we're talking 98 now, 97. So the servers were still wearing tuxedos, and they were still filleting fish tableside and bananas Foster's and Cherry's Jubilee. I mean, the whole, celebrity chef explosion had not happened yet. Like, the Food Network had just come into existence at that point. And again, I started off as, a dishwasher prep cook. From prep cook, I went to garde manger, or salads and desserts. And then from there, I went to, the grill, and then I went to saute. And then one day, after about a year, the chef, who I'll never forget, his name was Joe Taylor, he pulled me into his office one day and he said, listen, Alex, you've got 2 options in your life right now, as the way I see it. Option 1 is that you accept my offer as sous chef of this restaurant, and I'll pay you $500 a week salary, which at 18, 19 years old in 1996 seemed like a fortune.
Yeah.
Or you go to culinary school. And my response to that question, or that statement, was, what's culinary school? Like, I had no idea. I didn't even know. And he said, well, that's where you go to learn how to be a chef. And I said, well, I thought that you just worked in a restaurant long enough that people just started calling you chef. I had no clue. I really had no idea about this structure of how restaurants and chefs worked and whatnot. And so I took that to heart, and I went home and I started doing some research. I ended up applying to both the CIA in upstate New York and Johnson & Wales.
Okay.
I was accepted to both schools, but opted to go to the Charleston campus in Charleston, South Carolina, of Johnson & Wales, because I didn't want to deal with the cold winters of upstate New York.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a pretty campus. I've been there one time. It's a beautiful location, but yes, cold winters.
Yeah. So I packed up, my car full of stuff, and I found an apartment down there, and I enrolled in school, and I drove, 12 hours from Evansville, Indiana to Charleston, South Carolina, and I started culinary school. Because I was a Club Corporation of America guy, I was able to transfer down there to one of their golf courses.
Yeah.
So I had a job when I got there. Of course, I was in the clubhouse making, literally club sandwiches
Right.
for golfers. It wasn't really, the pinnacle of my culinary career.
Right.
And from there, I left Club Corps, and I went and worked at a really nice high-end seafood restaurant there while I went to culinary school. Got promoted to sous chef, and then they transferred me over to one of their other restaurants. And I was going to school 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then going straight to work and working until 1 o'clock in the morning as a sous chef. Graduated from culinary school. I went to the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, as an intern at first, eventually being promoted up to a sous chef role there. And after a few years of being in Asheville at the Biltmore, I kind of realized that Asheville, again, we're talking about 2001, 2002 now. Asheville hadn't really exploded to the city that it is now. It wasn't the culinary mecca that it's slowly becoming. So there really wasn't anywhere for me to go. I had reached at 22 years old, I had kind of reached the pinnacle, or 23 years old, of how far I was going to go in Asheville, North Carolina.
Right.
Like, there wasn't all these restaurant jobs and chef jobs out there, and no one was going to promote a 23-year-old kid to an executive chef position at the Biltmore.
Right.
So I left and I came to Atlanta. It seemed like the most logical place for me to go. I needed to get to a big city where there was more things happening with food and more opportunities for me to grow as a chef. I didn't know that Atlanta was going to explode the way that it has over the course of the last 18 years since I've been here. I got a job at I applied online and came down and interviewed at a small French bistro in Roswell, right downtown Roswell on Canton Street, called Pastis. And I was the sous chef there under a great chef named Richard Wilt for about a year. And then an opening came at their sister restaurant in Buckhead called Anis Bistro, which was kind of like one of the premier small locally owned French bistros in all of Atlanta, right in downtown Buckhead. And so I was offered the position as a chef there. And I went down there. I was a chef there for about a year and a half before a friend of mine and I partnered up and we decided to open our own restaurant, which was right in downtown Atlanta, in the old Fourth Ward area. At the time was, it was not a safe area in any way, shape, or form. It was pretty bad, pretty rough. But we saw a vision and had an idea, and we opened our restaurant. It was called Cuisine, and we were kind of the first of our kind there, and we watched this neighborhood flourish and grow around us. And then in 2014, the neighborhood had really gentrified like crazy. And I don't know if you go into Atlanta much or if you know the Inman Park area, but that whole area just exploded with the Inman Park corridor and all these giant restaurant groups like Ford Fry and MF Sushi and the Barcelona Wine Bar groups and whatnot. They all announced they're going to be opening these giant restaurants in the area. And we knew as a small kind of mom and pop's place that we were going to take a massive hit.
Yeah.
So we decided to sell the restaurant while the timing was good and the value was high. And, we did a 9-year run, which is pretty good. I was 27 years old when I opened up my restaurant.
No kidding. Yeah.
So I think that to make it 9 years and to walk away, we were pretty good. So I left and went into the corporate world for a while, a couple of years in the corporate department. And it just wasn't the right fit for me. I'm not a corporate chef. I wasn't designed to exist in that kind of structure, to not have the culinary freedom to be able to do whatever I wanted to do.
Right.
So after a couple of years of that, in 2016, I left my job without really a plan of what I was going to do. I was just burnt out.
Yeah.
I was unemployed for the first time in my life for like 6 weeks. And one day I got a phone call from these guys here in Winder, Georgia, and they told me they just opened up this restaurant. And that was 3.5 years ago, and here I am.
Yeah, and they just found you.
Yeah, it was kind of serendipity is what I call it. The owners had a vision to open up a restaurant here in the city. They have a separate business as well with offices kind of around us, and this building was part of their office spaces, and they thought it'd be really cool to have a small restaurant really be great for the city of Winder. But they were, I guess, ill-prepared. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but they're not really restaurant people. They're not restaurant owners.
Yeah.
So they really didn't have kind of really formulated, strong structure of a plan of exactly how they were going to do it. And so one of the operating partners at the time, they'd been open for 2 weeks, and my resume was obviously out there on Monster and Indeed and whatnot. And I'd been interviewing, but every job that was coming down my path was all corporate work, and I didn't want to go back into the corporate world. And I've been thinking about like, maybe I'll go into restaurant sales. Maybe it's time for me to get out all these kitchens and whatnot. And they called me and they said, hey, we opened this restaurant 2 weeks ago. We're kind of in over our heads. It's busier than we thought it was going to be. The person that we hired that we thought was going to be our kitchen manager or chef was not the right fit for us at all. And you live in Loganville.
Yeah.
I had moved to Loganville a few years earlier when my wife and I had our first child. We left the city and I'd been commuting back and forth.
Sure.
And then, the chances of finding a chef in Loganville, Georgia, that close to Winder.
Right.
So they said, will you please come and check it out and talk to us? And I literally said, where's Winder? Because I was an Atlanta guy and I'd lived in Atlanta for literally 15 years.
Yeah.
When we moved to Loganville, I never went past Loganville. Like if I needed something, I went back towards Atlanta because that's what I knew. So I came up here and I walked into the restaurant and it blew me away. It was absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
The restaurant is gorgeous. They did such a phenomenal job with it. And, we had a great interview and I said, if you can give me the opportunity to have culinary freedom to do kind of whatever I want, obviously within reason of the neighborhood and the area, I'll take the job. And they agreed on the spot. And, it was really, like I said, it was kind of serendipity. They needed me as much as I needed them.
Right.
And the relationship that I've built with the owners over the last few years has been phenomenal. They're amazing people. And I think that I oftentimes say that I kind of won the restaurant lottery. You know what I mean? Like I found the perfect job for me, and I'll work here with these people in this restaurant for forever.
Yeah, and this, as I said when we started, this is an area I've said to several people, just kind of being in this area, being in the world of real estate for 15 years now, downtown Brazelton, downtown Winder, if I was going to be doing anything to, just build a great business and a great following for the long haul, those are the two areas that I would look at right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. So obviously it's been 3.5 years. So it was October, November 2016 when I started, and the change and the growth that we've seen in downtown Winder and Winder as a community in general in those 3.5 years. Obviously I wasn't here before. I've heard the stories and I've talked to people about what Winder was like. It's amazing, and I have nostalgia for these little towns, right? And and so do the owners of the restaurant. because they're reminiscent of my own childhood. And these beautiful North Georgia mountain towns have so much history and so much character in their buildings and in their personality and whatnot. And some of them have really gotten run down, and Winder was one of them. And, you look at areas like downtown Lawrenceville. You look at, not Snellville so much because it doesn't really have a downtown like that. You look at Monroe, you look at Brazelton, those areas, they have completely redeveloped and changed the entire downtown while still keeping the history of the buildings that are there. And Winder's just, it's a few years behind them, but it has all the potential. The bones of the city are there. It just requires people to come in. And I've said in many interviews, we were the first of our kind here. I mean, we're still one of a kind in this whole area, what we do in the restaurant, but we were the first of our kind right here in Winder to open up something like this. And when a town is revitalizing, it needs a critical mass, right? You need enough restaurants, businesses in downtown to draw people into the city, so they're walking around, and they're bouncing from shop to shop or restaurant to restaurant. There's a nightlife and a day life happening within that city, but somebody's got to start that. There's got to be a spark for that. And so for us, I always said, if we as the Bistro can be a beacon of light, like a lighthouse to other business owners out there that have been thinking about wanting to do something and looking at the area of Winder and going, hey, maybe not. They can look at us as an example and say, if those guys can do it, if they can succeed the way they have, they can fight through the hard times in the beginning and build a relationship with the community like they have, then we can do it too. And now you're starting to see that, and the city itself is starting to follow suit. We've got new parks being built, and we've got walking trails from Fort Yargo being installed, and there's going to be a farmer's market in downtown Winder, God willing, starting in April, and there's going to be a food truck every Saturday, God willing, starting in April. And so there's these downtown events are starting to happen, and you're seeing this revitalization. You can look around from the windows of where we're sitting right now, and you can see construction literally happening in the buildings and the spaces around us that are being renovated and rejuvenated into what are going to eventually be restaurants and shops.
You are spot on all of that. When I first moved here, the first time I went to the downtown square area in Gainesville, my first comment was there needs to be more foot traffic. And this was 15 years ago. And I know all of the folks in the planning and the vision work in the city of Gainesville, they were watching towns like Greenville, South Carolina, and what they were doing in incorporating green space, incorporating locally owned, operated restaurants, retail shops. And if you look at the downtown square of Gainesville now, it's completely different. Like the shops, it is foot traffic friendly. That's what those downtown areas need. And then like Greenville, you've got good use of green space around the downtown areas where people are going to come to walk their dog, throw a frisbee or whatever, and then stay in town and get lunch and pick up a new shirt or a necklace or whatever.
Exactly.
So you're 100% right seeing all that. And this is my first time. So most of the time in these podcasts, I have been to the location before. You are unique in that I have had multiple people give like 5-star reviews, and so I'm like, well, I can trust these people. They don't steal me wrong. So you have this beautiful like old world feel, but it's you just feel high end. You feel like it's open. It's just a warm environment, but it does have that classy, elegant feel that you want in your higher end restaurants.
The building, obviously, like I said, I wasn't here for the construction phase of the restaurant, but I've been here long enough that I know the history behind all of this. This building and this space itself has a lot of history in the city of Winder. For 50 years, it was called Larry's Easy Pay, and it was kind of like a pawn shop slash all-purpose buy-it thing. And Larry like owned lots of property all around downtown Winder. He had a lawnmower repair business, and he had the pawn shop and all this stuff. And so there are people that come into this building now, not so much 3.5 years later, but when we first opened, they go, man, I bought my first lawnmower here. I can't believe this is what it is. So, the building itself is well over, 100 years old. We have these beautiful hardwood floors, these exposed brick walls. And all of this is majority of this is all original. Some of the floor had to be reconstructed because it was so bad, but the ceiling was caving in. all these brick walls were covered in layers of sheetrock.
Yeah.
Now we have, these exposed signages. Like you can see paint on the sides of the walls
Yeah.
where this building used to end here. And now they've extended the building out, and you can see the original paint from, 80 years ago when they had some sort of mural on the wall. And then the owners wanted to bring in kind of this chic Parisian feel to it. So you've got these beautiful chandeliers and the giant mirrors. The artwork literally came from a street artist in France.
Wow.
That they bought off the street and had shipped here on vacation. All the shiplap is original from the ceilings.
Oh, wow.
The giant barn doors are all original wood that they pulled out of the building and then they repurposed to make that with. And they spent a lot of time doing this, and it's a very cozy, warm, inviting space at night when the lights are dim and the candles are lit. It just feels cozy to you.
Yeah.
But chic at the same time.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of people that say, you could pick this restaurant up and stick it in Soho or on the east side, Upper East Side of New York or whatnot, and it would fit in absolutely perfectly. And they can't believe that something like this exists in Winder of all places, because 3 years ago you would have never thought that.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the menu for those who have not been here, don't know what kind of menu you have, because you've got some very creative items on the menu, both food and drinks. You guys have a nice, I don't want to say normal things, but things people have seen before, but then you've got some really creative items as well.
So my philosophy with food is, as it's grown over the years and as I've gotten older, I've never been one to want to over manipulate food, right? So I've always been kind of very simple in my style and my approach to cuisine. And when I came here, living in Loganville and near Grayson, there was a restaurant in Grayson that unfortunately has closed down that was called Graft. And Graft was this tiny little farm-to-table restaurant right in the middle of downtown Grayson, which really isn't a downtown,
right?
If you even have ever been to Grayson. And I remember going there a few times and really loved what they had done there. And so when I came here, this vision that I had for recreating the bistro and its food and its menu was that real farm-to-table feel, right? And I thought to myself, unlike Atlanta or these big cities where, yes, they have access to almost whatever they want, I'm in a unique situation where I have access to farmers,
right,
in a way that no one else does.
Right.
I don't have to call a purveyor and have that food get shipped to me. I can go to the farm myself and pick up the food if I want to.
Literally the farm.
Literally the farm, right? And they're so close to us that I can order tiny amounts at a time, 5 pounds of this and 8 pounds of this. And if I need more on Friday, I can call them and they'll either bring it to me or they'll put it in their drop box at the bottom of their driveway. And on my way into work, I can swing by and pick up vegetables and produce that were literally harvested 30 minutes earlier and washed and are waiting for me to bring into the restaurant. And so I started calling farms, right? I started researching where farms were and calling farms and trying to find farms and started building these relationships. And it started small. Started with one farm and then 2 farms and 3 farms. And then it started to become this obsession for me. And then I needed more farms. And I got to a point where what I really wanted for the bistro was I wanted to be kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to be the standard, the gold standard, the flagship of what farm to table in Georgia really means. And so at this point, during peak season of the restaurant, and we're talking like spring and fall when the weather's perfect and produce is really flowing in, about 80% of the product in our restaurant at any given time is local. And I mean local from the state of Georgia. And local in the sense that some of it is literally 5 miles up the road. And because of that, the menu has to work within those parameters of what we can get. So our chicken, our beef, our pork, our eggs, our honey, our flour, our wheat flour, our grits, our cornmeal, our honeycomb, our bee pollen, our produce, all of these things are all from local farmers. And it's literally like when you place orders, it's, hey, Matt Fry from Fry Family Farm. You got to call. I'm calling the farmers directly to place these orders, and the menu has to change and adapt based off of what's available to us. So if the weather changes, it rains too much, and all the lettuce rots, I got to change the menu because of that. Oh, I got to do it on the fly. If the okra is beautiful, and then the deer come through and eat all the okra off of all the plants, and I get a phone call the next day that says, "Hey man, the okra crop just got decimated by deer." Then okra has to come off the menu, and so I try to work within that. And what I really want to do is I want to focus on showcasing the food itself that's grown by the farmers and raised by the farmers and created by the artisans around us. So there's bakers and cheesemakers. So the food is it's kind of simple. It's simple in that style, and it's very Southern with kind of these European international influences in it here and there. And I always say that the bistro and its food and what it is is a sum of many parts. It's not what we do here at the bistro and yes, our job is to manipulate food and create food and cook it, put it on a plate, and I'll never take credit for all of that, although guests will always say, well, you had a part in it. Yeah. But it's the farmers that came before us. They put in all these hours, these countless hours of work to be able to provide us with this beautiful food that we get. And so, we have things as simple as beautiful whole roasted chicken from Springer Mountain Farms. It's a very simple brine, whole or half roasted chicken that comes with a selection of local vegetables that changes all the time. We do a Ossabaw Island pork meatloaf currently right now where we get whole hogs that are Ossabaw Island hogs from Ossabaw Island, Georgia. It's a very special kind of pig. There's very few people in the world or in the area that could produce them or growing them, one that I really know of. And we get the whole hog in. We get a delivery. We get a 115-pound hog delivered to us from head to tail. Yeah. And we utilize every part of that, mostly in that dish. Yeah. We make bacon out of the belly. We grind the meat up. We grind the bacon up, and we put that together, and we make the meatloaf out of it. We roast the bones to make the stock out of, to make the sauce out of. The skin gets, boiled and dehydrated and turned into chicharrones for our bar menu. The jaws get removed and get turned into guanciale. And so when we're done with that pig and we've processed that pig, we've literally used all of it. Yeah. Every piece of it gets used in some way, shape, or form. Our beef all comes from Brasstown beef, which is located in Blairsville on the border, kind of into North Carolina. So we have our ribeye and we have our filet that come from there. Our shrimp is all Gulf shrimp for our shrimp and grits. All of our grits come from Dayspring Farms, which is located in Danielsville, Georgia, which grows all of our wheat, does all of our flour. They mill on site. When I place my order on Monday for Tuesday delivery, they mill my wheat, my flour, my grits, all that stuff. They mill it right then and there, like that day, and they bring it to me fresh. And so we really try to make sure that whatever we're serving on the menu is showcasing the work that those guys have done before us in a way that isn't overly complicated, and it's food that people understand. But there are definitely items that I've done, whether it's a wine dinner or a New Year's Eve menu or a Valentine's Day menu, where people are all like, I can't believe you're not going to serve that. No one's going to buy that here. I remember at one point I put a whole roasted fish on the menu. Like a whole fish, head, tail, bones, skin, the whole 9 yards. And I remember our bar manager, Eric, who does a phenomenal job with our wines and our liquor program, looking at me and saying, no one's going to buy that. And it sold like crazy. And I remember him saying, like, I stand corrected. So, I like to say that I'm the culinary guru of Winder, Georgia and Barrow County. And then if I tell you to eat it, you'll eat it. Yeah. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. But mostly it does.
Yeah. So this may be an unfair question because of all the things that you've just shared and how your menu does pivot from time to time. What's your favorite thing on the menu? Or maybe if that's an unfair question, what's one of the more popular things on the menu?
The shrimp and grits sells really well. Shrimp and grits always sells well. I really like this dish because it showcases so many pieces of the farm and the farmers, what they do. So we make our own tasso ham, which is like a kind of a Louisiana style, spicy, cured, smoked ham out of the Ossabaw Island pork. The grits come from Dayspring Farms, but we did something different with that. Instead of just doing creamy grits, I really wanted to kind of figure out a way to create a hush puppy out of grits. We take the gluten-free issues here at the bistro really seriously, so everything that we fry at the bistro is gluten-free.
Oh, wow.
So I had to figure out how to make a hush puppy out of grits without using flour in any way, shape, or form. So now we've got these gluten-free grits that are crunchy on the outside. They look like hush puppies. When you break them open, they've got these creamy goat cheese grits in the center. Dude. And then we've got this kind of spicy tasso ham gravy with the grilled Gulf shrimp on there. That's a really popular dish that people really love, and it sells very well. The meatloaf is great. I love meatloaf. I joke around when people eat it and they tell me how good it is, and I always say, you can tell me if you want to, but is it better than your wife's meatloaf? And then the chicken's one of the items that's been on the menu since day one. Yeah. And I think that there's something really beautiful about a perfectly roasted chicken. It's so simple, but yet so elegant. And if it's done properly with quality ingredients, it's just a thing of beauty.
Let's pivot for just a second. So when we sat down, one of the things with all of what is going on in our modern world with coronavirus and everything, that I wanted to just take a minute and talk about how, because the restaurant industry obviously is one of the most impacted and most immediate hit, maybe with the exception of the airline and cruise industry where people just up and abandon things, the same day.
They have a lot more money to weather the storm, I think, than us small independent restaurants do.
Fair statement. From your perspective, and I'll kind of share mine, part of the whole reason that I started the podcast was there are so many great options, regardless of what price point you're looking to eat in, that are in our community. But as you've just said, you guys you're not just supporting yourselves, you're tied in
to the community.
Literally
to the community. The last week and a half for obviously everyone in this country, has been difficult and eye-opening and nerve-wracking. When you're a small restaurateur, I'm not the owner of the business, but the owners treat me like I am.
Yeah, you clearly have some ownership in
I
this.
feel I've vested ownership in it, whether my name is on the lease or not.
Right.
This is as much mine as it is anybody's, and I believe in what we do here, and I believe in the community a great deal. And so when you're looking at that, and you're looking at not just your staff, which is obviously a huge piece of it, but you're looking at the farmers that you support.
Right.
These are small local farms that we're buying, hundreds of dollars or more worth of produce from, and beef and chicken and whatever a week, and now we're not. And
right.
It's scary. It's a scary time, and it's hard. There was some very hard phone calls that were made in the last week to really great people that, by no fault of their own, are in a position that's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
We will, as the Bistro, we will weather this storm. Mm-hmm. Our owners are committed, and luckily for us, they have the ability, because they own the buildings and they don't have landlords that they have to answer to. They have the ability to weather this storm. Yeah. And when this is all said and done, the Bistro and the lobby, our sister restaurant next door, will both reopen, which is amazing. And so the silver lining on that cloud, to be able to, when you're calling your staff and you're saying, hey guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're going to file the unemployment paperwork for you. You're going to get the benefits that have been passed by the government or whatnot to help you guys out through this hard time. But the good news is that when this is all over, you're going to have jobs again.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of thousands of restaurants out there that are going to close their doors over the course of the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they'll never reopen them again.
Yeah.
Chefs, independent restaurateurs that poured their life and their money and their dreams into these spaces. And it's heart-wrenching. It really is heart-wrenching. And from a community, we all are responsible for helping each other at this point. Love your family, help your neighbor, and try to be a better person than you were 3 weeks ago.
Right.
So, I am constantly promoting my farmers.
Right.
Yesterday, much like the rest of the world, my overly concerned wife was smart, and she went out and she bought a ridiculous amount of groceries about 3 weeks ago before all this stuff happened, right?
Right.
So we really haven't had to go to the grocery store at all.
Right.
But you can't buy a lot of produce like that because
Right.
produce is going to go bad in your fridge. Yesterday, I opened the fridge up and said, we're going to need some produce soon. So I'm not going to Publix to buy produce. They don't need my money.
Right.
Fry Farm or Finch Creek Farm, they need my money. And so I called up my farmer and said, hey, man, I have your current availability list. Will you build me a harvest box, whatever you want?
Right.
And let me know how much it's going to be, and I'll pick it up tomorrow. And that's what I did. I drove by the farm yesterday, and I picked up a harvest box.
Yeah.
And that's what's in my fridge now. Beets and rainbow carrots and chard and kale and, radishes and, all kinds of beautiful produce. And I would encourage on that side of things that anyone that lives in a community where they have the opportunity or the ability to access farms, or they used to shop at farmers markets to get their eggs or their honey or their produce of any kind, all those markets are going to be closed down.
Yeah.
You can still find those farms.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of research on the internet to find out what local farms are around you and give them a call.
Yeah.
And see if you can go pick up from the farm.
Yeah.
And support them however you can.
Yeah.
We are blessed that the community, we believe in this community. We've helped support this community. We've donated charitable donations to the community in many ways. And I think that we're going to be blessed that the community is going to return that to us. We decided, we decided to close the dining room down on Tuesday. And it took us a couple of days to kind of process that and figure out what our plan was moving forward. And we decided that starting today, officially, Thursday the 19th, we were going to start doing the curbside pickup for multiple reasons. One of them is because any kind of revenue we can bring right now helps.
Sure.
Two, there's all this food in our coolers that we don't want to go bad and we
Right.
don't want to throw it away. I mean, obviously, we will donate that before that will happen.
Right.
So we created a menu based off what we had and what we could conceivably do for curbside pickup with the skeleton crew that we've got. And we put that out into social media, email blast to all of our people. And the response that we received in the 8 hours since that post went live. Now, that post has been shared over 100 times.
Wow.
It's been viewed by over 12,000 people, I think. It's got over 50 comments on it. And so I'm hoping that that's not just all talk.
Yeah.
But the community really is going to kind of come together, and they're going to help support us through these hard times in the same way that we would support them when they need the help.
Yeah.
And that's what community is all about.
Yeah, and that's so many good points. The other thing that I would share in conjunction with that, or maybe I guess in tandem with that, is one from the produce perspective, and just to get real practical, the more fresh what you're putting in and organic what you're putting in your body, the better your body functions in all of its functions, and obviously fighting off disease. So
Sure.
it's literally a win-win.
Well, and you're not going, I mean, there are certain things that you can't get from your local farmer that you
Right.
may need, right? Like you're not going to be able to buy potatoes this time of year
This time
from
of year,
from
right.
your local farmer, right? So yes, you're going to have to go to the store. But in the world that we live in right now, it's everyone's responsibility, obviously, to try to this whole social distancing thing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever we can do to avoid human contact, unfortunately, right now, is the best for everybody.
Right.
And so if you can go to your local farm
Yep.
and pick up produce, or a couple of different local farms, drive around town for the afternoon and go get honey, go get eggs, go get produce, whatever the case may be, from 3 or 4 different local farms, and avoid an unnecessary trip to the grocery store.
Right.
You're not in an environment where you're surrounded by hundreds of other people that
Right.
are all buying things, touching carts and doors and produce that's already been
Right.
touched and whatnot. All of those things help. And so you're right. It's a win-win. You're giving your body better stuff.
Yeah.
You're supporting your local community and your local farmers that need the help more now than anybody does. And you're avoiding the people that you don't need to be around right now in order to help curb this and get us all past it.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing is, when all this is passed, like you said, there are going to be restaurants and small businesses everywhere that are not going to be there in 4 weeks.
Yep.
And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that some of us can do about that right now. What we can do is when this passes, when you have the opportunity or the options to go to different places and frankly in all sorts of different price points, make a decision that you are going to consciously support a local restaurant or local business, because frankly, any of the things that are on this podcast are going to be better than anything you're going to get from a chain restaurant, regardless of what price point you're in.
Of course.
But also, you're going to be giving those restaurants, those employees, a boost that they so desperately need. And frankly, once you try them, you will come back because they're all amazing.
And there's things that you can do now as well. There's not a lot, but there are things that you can do. There are lots of local restaurants out there on Facebook and social media that have created GoFundMe pages for their staff.
Yeah.
If you've got the financial wherewithal, you've got the ability to do it, and you believe or love a small local restaurant within your community, find them on Facebook and see what they're doing. If you can donate anything to a GoFundMe page in a certain way that goes towards the staff that's been furloughed or laid off, or however you want to look at it right now, those things help. If they're doing curbside pickup, life is hard right now and money is tight for everybody, or will be very soon.
Yeah.
But when you're at home from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're trying to work from home and homeschool your 2 small children,
right,
you probably don't have time to put a proper meal together that's healthy and fresh and good. And you're going to stick a frozen pizza in the oven, or you can call your local restaurant, and you can, if they've got curbside pickup, get in the car and drive out there. They're taking the precautions. They're wearing gloves. They're wearing masks. They're going to come out there. They're going to give it to you as much contact-free as possible, and support them in that way.
Right.
Or buy a gift certificate. That's a huge thing that people can do right now. That's
a great idea.
If your restaurant is closed down, or they're doing curbside only at the moment, you want to support them, but you don't want to go out and get food from them, buy a $50 gift certificate, buy a $100 gift certificate, give them that money now to put into their bank accounts to use, so they can keep the lights on and keep the restaurant open and pay a few people at the moment. And then when things get back to normal and the dining room reopens,
Yeah.
Then you come back and you go, hey, you know what? I got this $50 gift card that I bought, or this $100 gift card. I'm going to go in there with a group of 6 people or 8 people, and we're going to use that $100 gift card, and we're going to spend another $200 on top of that to help support these guys and get them back on their feet to where they go. And that's a really easy way to be able to contribute to your small local restaurants without even having to step foot in the door, having to buy food, having to deal with anything. Just buy a gift card.
Yeah,
it's huge.
That's
and
awesome.
every dollar right now helps us and all the other restaurants that are out there right now. They're struggling.
Awesome. All right, so I know we're coming up on the lunch hour, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. One of the things I like to do in every episode is what I call the lightning round, which is usually right before we wrap up. So today's lightning round question is a question that these questions don't have anything to do with anything. It's just fun questions that I come up with.
Okay.
All right, so the topic of this one is called Polar Platinum. The question is, which musical artist would have better odds of going platinum in the polar opposite genre than where they've already gone platinum? So your options are Snoop Dogg going country or Zac Brown going hip-hop. Who's got better odds of going platinum?
I would say Snoop Dogg going country for sure, because I would, based off of what country music these days is like,
yes,
that it's, there's way more country fans that will listen to hip hop than hip hop fans that are going to listen to country.
I 100% agree. Yes, that is the correct answer. So let's wrap up with, how do people find you when things get back, your dining room's back open, reservations required?
Yeah, you can find us on Resy for reservations.
Okay. So
Resy.com. You can do online reservations. You can follow us on Facebook, Bistro Off Broad. You can follow us on Instagram at Bistro Off Broad. Our sister restaurant, Lobby at Thematics, has a Facebook page as well, an Instagram account as well. You can call the restaurant. You can Google us. All the information is there that you need. We're located right in the heart of downtown Winder. And we're here with curbside. We're here to feed you guys in the future and to help support the community.
Yeah, super easy to find, beautiful atmosphere, and I can't wait to try the food. So
awesome.
Chef Alex, thanks for your time, and with that, we'll wrap up.
I appreciate you. Thanks.
This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live.